The invisible weight of sensitivity. There are some among us who are born different, not in form but in frequency. People who don't just walk through the world, but feel through it. They don't simply hear what is said. They feel what is not. These are the ones born close to the veil, that thin, trembling boundary between the visible and the invisible, between this world and the one we cannot name. They come into this life with an openness, a kind of inner door that was never shut. While others live with walls, they live with windows. While others armor up, they absorb. They may be called too sensitive, too soft, too emotional, but in truth, they are tuned into the subtle music of existence. Sensitivity is not a weakness. It is an instrument, finely tuned one, and like any instrument left out in the storm, it must be protected, not silenced, because the world doesn't know what to do with such sensitivity. It praises those who endure without feeling, not those who feel without defense. You might cry when others laugh, feel tired after entering a room, sense when something is off before a word is spoken. You might carry dreams so vivid they linger for days, and emotions so deep they feel like oceans inside your chest. But you are not broken. You are just attuned to what others avoid. You hear the unspoken. You see beneath the mask. You hold space for what the world refuses to acknowledge. Carl Jung once said that the unconscious does not care whose pain it is. It just demands to be seen. And you, the sensitive soul, often become the one who sees it first. Not because you choose it, but because you are it. The unconscious recognizes your openness, and so it speaks to you. Through feelings, through symbols, through dreams that haunt and heal. This is the invisible weight you carry. The grief that isn't yours. The fear that was never spoken. The sorrow of generations that somehow found its way into your skin. Most people don't even notice. But you do. You always do. And so, without realizing it, you become a vessel. You walk into a room and feel everything no one says. You stand beneath a tree and weep, not for yourself, but for something older, something ancestral, that passed through you like a river seeking release. This is why you're tired. Not because you are weak, but because you are carrying stories, energies, echoes, and unless you learn how to hold it, it will begin to hold you. But let me tell you this, as someone who sees what you may not yet believe. Your sensitivity is sacred. It is not a flaw. It is a calling, a way of being chosen, not for suffering, but for awakening. When you absorb what isn't yours, there is something no one tells you when you're born sensitive. That you don't just feel your own emotions. You feel what others hide. You feel what the world has buried. You feel what generations before you never had the chance to grieve. You walk into a room, and before a single word is spoken, your body already knows what's being withheld. Fear, anger, loneliness, all of it hits you before anyone else even notices it's there. You pick up grief that doesn't have a name. You absorb rage that has no outlet. You carry sorrow that has no story, and all of it clings to you, not because you ask for it, but because you're porous. Wide open, without knowing it. This psychic porosity is not something you can see, but it is something you can feel. In your exhaustion, in your confusion, in that quiet despair that whispers, "Why am I feeling this way?" Even when nothing's wrong, you begin to believe that the anxiety is yours, that the sadness is yours, that the heaviness belongs to you. But often, it doesn't. It belongs to the collective. It belongs to the unconscious. It belongs to everything unspoken that you were never meant to carry alone. But there's a reason this weight finds you. Not because you are weak, but because you are open. Because you are receptive. Because something in you is attuned to the deeper field of human experience. And yet, here lies the danger. When you absorb everything, you start to lose track of what belongs to you. Where do you end? And where does the world begin? Jung understood this. He knew the unconscious was not polite. It does not say, "This sorrow is not yours." It simply delivers, simply reveals. And unless you are rooted in something deeper than emotion, can swallow you whole. This is why some sensitives become lost. not because they are incapable, but because they are unstructured, because they never learned the sacred boundary between compassion and identity. Sensitivity without structure becomes suffering, not because the world is cruel, but because the inner self has no shelter, because you have been carrying other people's storms in your sky. You think something is wrong with you, but nothing is wrong. You are simply full of what others cannot hold. And no one taught you how to empty. No one taught you how to draw the line between presence and possession. If you are always absorbing, always feeling, always holding space, then eventually you forget that your soul has a center too. A place where you are not a mirror, but a flame. Where you are not a vessel, but a voice. The unconscious does not care if you drown. It only wants to be seen. And you, the sensitive one, were born to see. But you must not mistake everything you see as yours to carry. This is where the real work begins. Learning to feel without absorbing, to care without collapsing, to witness without disappearing. Because you are not here to carry everyone. You are here to recognize what has been lost, and remain whole as you do. A dreamer's story. He was 24, and he came to me with trembling in his voice and a weight behind his eyes that spoke louder than words. He said he hadn't slept properly in years. Not because of nightmares, but because his dreams felt too real, like messages he didn't know how to read. One night, he told me he had a dream. He was at a dinner party. People laughing, music playing, the kind of surface-level comfort the world celebrates. But beneath his feet, he felt something strange. A soft cracking, like the floor no longer belonged to gravity. Suddenly, without warning, the floor gave way. The polished tablecloths, the polite conversations, the silverware, all disappeared in an instant as he fell silently through the ground, swallowed by something darker, older, and utterly silent. He fell and fell, but there was no fear. Only stillness, as if the descent wasn't punishment, but preparation. He landed softly in a vast cavern, dimly lit, warm like a womb, ancient like something the earth had forgotten but the soul remembered. And in that cavern, a figure waited for him. Not frightening, not familiar, just present. A presence that didn't speak, but understood. And without words, this being began to paint symbols onto his skin. Slow, deliberate, sacred, as if remembering something his bones had always known. The symbols were not decorative. They were language, not of the mind, but of the myth. They told stories older than memory, truths deeper than belief. They weren't answers. They were keys. And as this silent ritual unfolded, tears fell from his eyes. Not from pain, but from recognition. Something in him knew he was not being punished. He was not being buried. He was being reborn. When he woke, the world had not changed, but he had. And nothing, from that moment forward, would ever feel surface level again. The dream had marked him. It had pulled him beneath the appearance of life into the soul of it. I told him what perhaps no one had ever said to him before. You are not being buried. You are being called. You have not fallen apart. You are descending. This is what the ancients called catabasis, the sacred descent into the underworld, not as punishment, but as initiation. You see, in every myth worth remembering, the hero does not begin by rising. They begin by falling, by being pulled down into the dark, not to be destroyed, but to uncover what was buried. And that's what the sensitive soul often misunderstands. The descent is not the end. It is the invitation to meet yourself not as the world has told you to be, but as you truly are. He was never too sensitive. He was simply uninitiated. No one taught him that sensitivity is not something to overcome. It is something to listen to shape, to descend with. And so I say to you, if you have ever fallen, if you have ever broken, if you have ever dreamed of symbols or wept without cause, do not rush to rise. Sit with it, enter it, let it speak, because descent, when honored, always leads to deeper life. Initiation through darkness. There comes a time, often without warning, when the sensitive soul can no longer keep afloat. the world feels heavier than it ever has. But it's not just stress. It's something deeper, like the soul itself has become waterlogged. You begin to dream in symbols that feel more real than your waking life. Floods rushing through your home, staircases that descend forever, strangers watching you from within your own walls. You wake up shaken, but there's nothing wrong on the surface. So you ask yourself, what is happening to me? And no one has an answer that fits. You feel everything: grief, joy, rage, but all of it is too much, too loud, too undefined. And when you try to speak it, the words dissolve in your throat. Because how do you explain a pain that doesn't belong to your biography? And so you wonder, am I losing myself? Am I going crazy? But what if I told you, this isn't madness. This is initiation. This is the ancient process of transformation that the modern world has forgotten how to name. Carl Jung called this moment a threshold, not of breakdown but of breakthrough, a descent into the unconscious, not to be feared, but to be honored. The soul is not punishing you. It is preparing you. It is stripping away what no longer serves so that what is true can emerge. This is the sacred unraveling before becoming. This stage, this spiritual emergency, can feel like death, and in a way it is, the death of the false self, the persona, the mask you wore to survive. But there is a promise hidden in this darkness, a whisper beneath the flood. You will not drown if you remember who you are beneath the storm. This is the journey of individuation, the slow, sacred process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not pure, but whole. Light and shadow, wound and wisdom, all of you. You are not here to eliminate your darkness. You are here to integrate it. Because the self, the true self, is not one thing. It is the marriage of all your pieces. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And you cannot do that without passing through the fire, without walking through the underworld of your own soul. When you stop running from the symbols, the dreams, the floods, they change. The unconscious no longer chases you. It begins to guide you. Where there was drowning, there is now baptism. Where there were wounds, there is now meaning. Where there was chaos, there is now clarity." And so, if you find yourself in the middle of the storm, this inner collapse, remember, this is not the end of your story. This is the sacred beginning of your truth. You are not being destroyed. You are being delivered. From absorption to intuition, you've descended. You've walked through your own darkness. You've seen what others avoid. But the question lingers in your chest like a quiet echo. How do I survive this sensitivity without losing myself again? The answer is not to close yourself. It is to contain yourself, to build sacred boundaries that allow life to flow through you without flooding you. The sensitive soul survives by learning the difference between absorption and intuition. Absorption drowns you in what is not yours. Intuition listens and then chooses. This begins with the most difficult lesson, learning to ask, is this mine? Not every feeling that passes through you belongs to you. The empath does not fail because they feel too much. They suffer because they claim what does not belong to them. Set boundaries not as walls to keep the world out, but as rivers to guide the flow. A container is not separation. It is structure. Begin to track your emotions like dreams, not as facts but as messages. When sadness arrives, ask it, what are you here to show me? When anxiety speaks, whisper back, whose voice are you echoing? Your emotions are not always yours. Sometimes they are maps to hidden truths in the collective soul. They are not burdens. They are invitations. And the unconscious tries to help. It speaks in images, in dreams, in symbols. If you are leaking your energy, it may show you a dream of a broken vessel, dripping endlessly. If you are absorbing others' pain without consent, you might dream of strangers entering your home, doors left open, windows unlatched. If your soul is crying for boundaries, the dream might show animals staring at you through glass. The instinctual, the primal, waiting for permission to cross. These are not random scenes. They are teachings. The unconscious is not trying to confuse you. It's trying to speak in a language deeper than words. And so you begin the real practice, Not fixing yourself, but listening to yourself. Not asking, why am I like this? But rather, what is this emotion teaching me? You stop reacting and start responding. You no longer drown in emotion. You consult it. You sit beside it. You ask it to show you the story. And slowly, like dawn after the longest night, your sensitivity becomes refined. Not noise, but signal. Not chaos, but clarity. Intuition is not a gift you were given randomly. It is the refined wisdom born of surviving absorption. It is the quiet voice that comes after you have learned to discern. You are not too much. You were simply untrained. But the soul remembers, and in remembering, it begins to guide. The archetype of the wounded seer. There is an ancient role older than language, deeper than culture. The one who sees what others refuse to look at. The one who feels what the world tries to bury. This is the archetype of the wounded seer. The wounded seer does not ask to be born this way. They arrive already open, already attuned, already aching with the truths that no one dares to name. Their burden is not that they feel. It is that they must carry what others deny, must witness what others disown, must speak what others cannot even see. They walk into rooms and hear the silence beneath the laughter. They stand in front of beauty and feel the grief it hides. They hold joy and weep, knowing how fleeting it is. The world does not always welcome such sight, calls it sensitivity, calls it weakness, but deep down it knows. The wounded seer holds the mirror, and in that mirror truth trembles. The wound, the place where life first broke you, it does not close by forgetting. It becomes a doorway, a threshold, a holy fracture where the soul steps through. Many, faced with this calling, turn back. They numb themselves, shrink into roles, paste on personas like masks to survive the noise. But a few, a rare, quiet few, do not run. They surrender to the descent. They allow the wound to speak. And from the fire of their undoing, something ancient begins to form. These are the mystics in modern clothes. The therapists who feel like shamans. The artists who bleed symbols. The dreamers who walk between worlds, half awake, half remembering. You were never here to carry everyone. That is not your role. You are not a savior. You are a mirror. You are here to reflect what has been forgotten in the human soul. To be the wounded seer is not to be crushed by what you see. It is to stand in it, to feel it all, and to choose again and again not to close, not to harden. Your wound is not just yours. It is the world's. It is the part of humanity entrusted to you. Not to fix, but to feel fully. And when you no longer resist it, when you stop asking, why me? And start whispering, let me see clearly. The wound becomes a lens, and through it, the sacred reveals itself. This is the sacred paradox of the wounded seer. Your pain is not your prison. It is your portal. And if the world still does not understand you, that's okay. You weren't born to be understood. You were born to remember, to remind, to mirror. In your gaze, others glimpse their buried truths. In your silence, others hear what they've tried so hard to forget. You do not need to shout to be heard. The seer is not loud. The seer is present, rooted, witnessing, not rushing to rescue, but willing to hold the gaze of what is real. And that presence, that steady, sacred presence, is how the world begins to heal. Returning transformed, you are not who you were. There comes a moment, soft, quiet, almost unnoticed, when you realize you're no longer the same. You've returned from the descent, but the one who walks back into the world is not the one who left. Something has shifted, not on the surface, but in the marrow. You are not just sensitive anymore. You are precise. You no longer blur into the world. You choose how to meet it. Your feelings are no longer floods. They are instruments. Your intuition, once overwhelming, now moves like a blade. Clean, clear, discerning. You don't absorb everything you touch. You notice, and you choose. This is your power. Not to carry all things, but to know what is yours to carry, and what is not. You no longer react. You respond, not from fear, not from overwhelm, but from the still point inside you, the center you found when everything else fell away. And while the world may continue to spin, while others may still rush or numb or pretend, you move differently now. You listen before speaking. You feel before deciding. Most people are still asleep, still caught in roles and noise and avoidance. But you have seen behind the curtain. You know that silence is not emptiness. It is invitation. Do not resent those who haven't awakened. They are not behind you. They are you at a different point on the spiral. Meet them with the compassion you once needed. You do not need to preach. You do not need to prove. You only need to be. Your clarity, your stillness, your presence. That is the message. You've become the mirror, not to reflect the noise, but to reflect the soul. The sacred, the forgotten, the longing that lives beneath every mask. This is the quiet gift of your return. You bring back not answers, but presence. You carry no doctrine, only the truth of your becoming. And in your presence, something begins to stir in the world around you. Not because you demand it, but because you remind it. Living the myth, not escaping the world. There comes a time when you no longer walk the world as just a person. You move through it as meaning embodied. Every glance, every silence, every choice you make becomes part of the story the soul is telling through you. You're not acting anymore. You're remembering. You're no longer seeking symbols outside of yourself. You've become the living myth, breathing poetry into the ordinary. Your dreams are no longer random. They are scripture. They carry you to the temple that lives in your own bones. They whisper what the waking world forgets. And your silence, oh, your silence has become a prayer. Not an absence of sound, but the presence of truth. It says, I am listening. I am here. I am enough. You no longer need to explain yourself. You no longer owe your path to anyone's understanding. The myth does not justify itself. It simply is. Let others debate. Let them label and question. You live it. You live your truth as ritual, as offering, as quiet rebellion against the shallow noise of forgetting. And though you may tremble, you are not fragile. You are feral. You belong not to the system, but to the sacred wilderness of soul. You are not broken. You are whole. Not because you were never wounded, but because you stayed with your wounds until they became wisdom. The old world still asks you to produce, to please, to prove, but you no longer serve through effort. You serve through essence, through realness. You do not need to do more. You need only be more fully who you are, rooted, aware, unshakable in your presence. That is how you serve now. The world does not need more noise. It needs mirrors. It needs medicine. And you are both. You carry no banner, no brand. Only your breath, only your truth. That is your offering. That is your rebellion. And when you move like this, honest, sacred, unhurried, the world cannot help but shift. Not because you forced it to change, but because you remembered how. You were never too much. You were simply born to feel what others fear, to hear what others silence, to carry the song of what the world forgets. And every ache you've held in silence, every tear you wept without words, it wasn't weakness. It was your soul remembering the truth. You are not broken. You are the myth the world lost. You are the mirror the world avoids. You are the medicine it quietly longs for. And yes, you are free now, not because you escaped the darkness, but because you walked through it with your soul intact. If something in this touched the sacred space in you, leave a comment below. Let your soul echo. You are not alone in this depth. If this felt like remembering, not learning, then share this with someone whose light has dimmed, someone waiting to be seen again. Your dreams matter. Let them speak. Let them guide. Write them. Speak them. Let them shape you. They are not random. They are sacred. And if your heart still trembles, let it tremble with presence. That trembling is not weakness. It is aliveness. It is truth vibrating at the edge of awakening. Subscribe if you want more than noise. If you want a place where silence is sacred and depth is honored. Because here, your story isn't too much. Your dreams aren't too strange. Your truth isn't too deep. It's welcome. All of it. Welcome home.